Good morning, and thank you for joining us here in the boardroom. My name is Trevor Lutz. I'm the president and CEO of Sandcastle Community Management. We're a Southwest Florida-based property management company specializing in condominiums, HOAs, co-ops, marinas, anything association-related. And every week we bring you the boardroom. And here in the boardroom, we get the opportunity to bring in professionals in a variety of areas of expertise that can help your association run a little smoother and certainly help you avoid some of the pitfalls and some of the problems that are inherent with managing associations. And today, we're lucky enough to have Joshua Porter. He's the president of Consult Engineering, Inc., and a professional consulting and engineering firm here in the Southwest Florida area. Thank you, Josh, for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Trevor.
And an important topic today, and this is something that's near and dear to every board member's heart, parking lots to roofs, maintaining your community. That's one of the main things that an association or a board is tasked with is maintaining the association. They're in charge of the longevity of the community, and you're going to help us walk through some of the things we should be looking at.
Yeah, and in fact, really maintenance is a lot of times, in my opinion, one of the biggest ticket items that an association will spend their collections on.
Absolutely. It's maintenance, it's insurance, and maybe property management, and landscaping, of course.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, what are we referring to when we're talking about maintenance? How broad of a picture are we looking at?
Sure. Well, maintenance really, from an engineering consultant's perspective, can be broken down into three categories.
Okay.
Preventative maintenance. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a routine inspection. During those inspections, you might find faults, and then you have those corrected. It doesn't, the faults that they find are not faults that would actually stop any component of the building from functioning, an elevator from running or anything like that. But when you have that elevator inspection, they might find something minor.
Sure.
Corrective maintenance, this involves fault detection and correction. Basically, that's the technical term for something that has stopped working. You've got a roof that's leaking. You've got a window that's leaking. You've got an elevator that's not working. This is corrective maintenance. You call basically the repair guy, the contractor, to come out and repair that problem.
Sure.
Then the last item, which is really the most important or something that is the biggest ticket item, is really what we refer to as deferred maintenance. And this is basically any kind of preventative or corrective maintenance, like the first two that we just talked about, that is postponed until a later date because it's more economically feasible to do that.
Okay. Now, obviously, boards should be proactive in their approach as well as opposed to reactive. And so they should be doing inspections on a regular basis?
Yeah, and a lot of associations, in my opinion, do not do enough inspections. Where most condo and homeowner associations are doing real well is, they have their roofs. Most associations, most of my clients have their roofs inspected routinely by a roofing contractor. And they have these other types of things done. Where they're kind of where I see that they're oftentimes missing the ball is on the envelope of the building. Painting. When you have a painting project, that's a perfect time to have an envelope inspection for somebody who can look for things that would cause water intrusion into the building, and those types of routine inspections really aren't getting done too much, and that's kind of part of what we do at Consult. We try to educate associations that these are things that really are very little money and can pay out big time in the long term.
And if they're not being proactive, they may be painting over the problem so they can't identify it later.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And they're relying on their contractor, their general contractor, their painting contractor to identify if there's an envelope problem. But the painter wants to get in there and get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, the painter, he's not going to look at any kind of trades that are outside of his expertise. So if he's going to look at your building, he's going to come up with a painting solution. He also is fighting what he understands the other industry professionals will be proposing. So he's got to say, okay, well, I know this building has this problem, that problem, and this problem, but if I go and throw everything in the kitchen sink into my bid, I'm not going to win this project. Sure. So he kind of has to second guess himself a little bit compared to what he thinks other contractors are going to be bidding. The nice thing with the consulting engineers, they come in and they lay the groundwork of what the scope needs to be.
Well, tell us a little bit about Consult Engineering and a little bit about you and what you do.
We are an engineering consulting firm, and we specialize only in condo and homeowner associations.
Okay.
And we really are a firm that's focused around walking associations through their problems, problems related to maintenance and deferred maintenance items such as roofs, painting projects, building restoration, that's a huge one, window replacement projects, things like this. And our goal is to come out, assess the situation, give the board options, options with recommendations and results of what they can expect. What kind of useful life can you expect out of these various options, and really assist the board, not make the decisions for boards, but assist the board in them making an informed decision on what they want to do with their project, and then going as far as bidding out the project and overseeing the project.
And putting together the scope, the whole bit.
Yeah, and a lot of times we, pretty much every time we also prepare the contract using industry standard contracts, and then I would say about half my associations go ahead and have that contract reviewed by their attorney, which is always recommendation, and then we incorporate any feedback that we get back from their attorney, and that all becomes incorporated as part of the bidding process.
Now, how often are boards calling you out proactively as opposed to reactively? Are they usually calling you once something has collapsed, or are they calling you in advance?
Yeah, they actually most of the calls we get are reactive, and for us as a business, that's actually better because because basically when you call us out, you already know you have a problem,
right?
I show up as the solution provider. Okay, when you hire a company to do like a preventative inspection, you hire us to do an envelope survey,
exactly.
Then I show up. You're not aware as an association that you have any problems. Then I do an envelope survey. Maybe I discover something. Okay, now I'm the bearer of bad news.
Right, as opposed to the solution provider.
Right. So I'm not the knight in shining armor anymore. I'm the guy breaking the bad news to you.
Right.
And then there's a suspicion. Well, is this really a problem? This is the guy who discovered it.
Why didn't we know about it? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this whole topic of maintenance is really a catch-22. Because for me, I would rather you not maintain your building and that you just let everything fall apart, because then I can come in and solve all your problems and charge you a lot of money. But on the other hand, that's not really, in the long term, that's not really my goal. My goal is to help people, is to help associations, help homeowner associations and condo associations. And there are services we can provide as a preventative measure.
And what are some of the biggest deferred maintenance items an association would typically face?
Deferred maintenance items, that would be painting, paving, and roofing. Those are the three that are heavily incorporated into the reserve study. Okay, so statutes say that you got to reserve for painting, paving, roofing, and anything over $10,000, right? The other two items, which I often find are not incorporated into people's reserve studies, when I get hired to do a reserve study and they show me the old one and I look, a lot of times you don't have anything in there for a window replacement,
right,
and you don't have anything in there for building restoration. And these are by leaps and bounds the two most expensive things an association will ever do on their building is to do a building restoration and to do window replacement, and they're not funding for them in their reserve. So it's it's crazy.
Yeah, I think I can count on one hand of the associations that are reserving for window replacement. It's very rare.
Oh, yes, very, very rare.
Let's talk about then roofs, starting with roofs. What's the typical useful life of a roof?
Sure. Well, the roofs, most condo and homeowner associations have either a metal roof or a flat roof, or they have tile roofs, and occasionally smaller, like homeowner associations and things, will have shingle roofs. Most of these material types, other than metal roofs, will have a typical lifespan of 15 to 25 years, depending on the material and the quality and how well it was installed. And metal roofs often last a lot longer, and that also depends on what type of metal roof you have, whether you have a standing seam or a 5V crimp or something like that. But that range, that 15 to 25 year range, is such a wide range.
Sure.
And it's not completely dependent on the material that was actually put onto your roof. A lot of it actually has to do with how much you maintain that asset, that roof. Is it regularly maintained, or is it? Do you only call the contractor out when you finally have a leak into the floor of your unit?
And what kind of maintenance should they be doing on a regular basis to extend the life of that roof?
Well, like on a flat roof, for example, the contractor, you should have a contractor who's coming out biannually and or at least annually, and coming out and walking the roof. And like on a flat roof, he'll look for air bubbles or basically they're moisture vapor bubbles that are under the membrane of the roof, and he needs to cut those out and patch them, because these are signs that water is getting into the roof, or maybe has been trapped into the roof cavity. And those are types of things that they would do. They would check for seams and laps and things like that. For tile roofs, you really want to make sure you replace any broken tile, because any broken tile is a source where water is getting down into the underlayment in an excessive amount.
Sure.
You want to look for cracks in the mortar. So there's a lot of things that an association may not be aware is actually a problem with their roofs. But these contractors, when they come out and do these regular routine inspections, can actually catch a lot of these things.
And should the association be replacing the roof proactively, like at the 22-year mark, or should they be waiting until there's a real problem?
That would really depend on a thorough assessment. A lot of times, you get to that mark. Maybe you have in your reserve study you have 22 years, and you get to that mark. My recommendation isn't just blanket replace it. My recommendation is get a professional and get it assessed, and then you do an assessment year to year.
And speaking of assessments and professionals, Josh, how do people get a hold of you if they want to talk about their roofs or any of the other maintenance in their community?
You can call our office at 941-206-3000, or you can email us at office@consultengineering.com.
Excellent. Well, you're listening to The Boardroom. My name's Trevor Lutz, and we are sitting with Joshua Porter, the president from Consult Engineering, Inc., and we've got more to come. Stick with us. And welcome back to The Boardroom. My name is Trevor Lutz. Every Saturday morning, we're bringing you the best of the best, local professionals that can help your association run a little smoother. Today is no different. We have Joshua Porter. He's the president from Consult Engineering, Inc., and he's in the studio today, and we're talking about parking lots to roofs, maintaining your community. And Josh, just before the last break, we were talking a little bit about roof replacement. And, should an association seek the help of a roofing consultant when undertaking new roofs, or should they just go directly to the roofing vendor?
More often than not, I'm called out after they've already gone to the roofing vendor and they've been confused by all the options.
Oh, okay.
But the recommendation is to definitely get professional help from the very beginning. Help you determine what kind of roof you need, what kind of underlayment you need, what kind of detailing work you need done. The most important thing for an association to do before they really embark on any kind of roofing project is to determine what level of service do you want from your consultant. Mm-hmm. Do you want general roof consulting, or do you want owner representation? Mm-hmm. There are roof consulting firms out there. A lot of these firms are retired roofing contractors. Mm-hmm. And the difference between that and a professional engineering firm is not only do we do the engineering in-house and we don't have to farm it out, mm-hmm. but then also we carry professional liability insurance.
Absolutely.
So, when you hire a professional to oversee and provide management, you're not really hiring them. And I get requested all the time, we need a copy of your general liability insurance. And I say, okay. And I, happily give them a copy of my general liability insurance. But really, if you have a problem with the engineer or architect or consultant, you're going to want to sue them. They're going to fall back on their professional liability. Their general liability is not going to cover anything for malpractice as far as engineering or architectural work.
Which many of them don't have that coverage.
As far as I know, yeah. So so the difference, going back to the roof consulting versus owner rep level of service, there's a cost difference, obviously, of this level of service. General roof consulting involves the consultant coming out. They might come out 2 days a week, maybe. Mm-hmm. They might walk the roofs. Their goal is to generally observe to make sure that the project is moving on schedule, mm-hmm. That the work is getting done, that the proper materials have been delivered, and they'll record field reports, and they'll have meetings with the board, and they'll communicate these items. Owner representation is really about making sure the client gets what they pay for. Mm-hmm. And more often than not, the analogy I use is the contractors that are coming out, these contractors are going to do naturally decent work. They're going to do, I call it B to B plus work. Mm-hmm. And the goal of an owner rep is to really make sure you get an A plus job. Absolutely. And so we're out there a lot. We're walking the roofs a lot more. If there's a leak during the roofing project, I'll give you an example. We had a large 41 unit roofing project going on in the Sarasota County, mm-hmm. and it was going on during that record rainfall mm-hmm. that we just had in 2013, and there was leaks galore, going on in the units. So as an owner rep, we go in, we record the extent, we make sure the contractor's aware of what they need to do, we make the owners aware, we bring out the thermal imaging infrared camera, we record all this information. These are services that are way far and beyond what a roof consultant would typically include. Absolutely. Now, I don't know. I'm assuming that they could provide these services, but then it might be an add-on to their contract, or it's not what you're not getting what you think you're getting when you pay for those types of things. Sure. And the difference, kind of, that we're talking about for cost is really. Owner rep versus roof consulting is typically about a 1 to 2 cost difference. I see. But you got to think, with your roofing project, you're going to embark on a $500,000 roofing project, let's say. The owner rep services are going to be maybe $40,000-$45,000. It's not a huge chunk to pay, and that's total, bidding and everything. Mm-hmm. It's not a huge chunk to pay when you're going to pay $25,000 to get roof consulting, and then these guys really aren't providing any kind of owner rep services. Absolutely. So the difference is really only $20,000 maybe on a $500,000 $500,000 project. So you have to kind of evaluate, well, are we going to pinch our pennies, or are we going to, put our best foot forward to make sure we get what we're paying for?
Now we have some listener questions. You game to take some, answer some emails here?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. We got one from Ben in Naples. He says, our board has gotten dozens of bids for roof replacements, but we're so confused with the various options that we're at a standstill. In addition, each contractor has given us a different remaining life expectancy, which has divided the board. Some want to do the roofs now, some want to wait 7 more years. How could your firm help us sort through this?
In that kind of situation where the board sounds like they're not even actually sure yet if it's time to replace, that's when you come in and you have a firm like ours come and do a condition survey. And what we'll do, and this is that year to year, okay?
Right.
And what we're going to do is we're going to look at how much you've spent on repairs, leaks, how much you've spent, how much you're spending on maintaining those roofs and cleaning them, and those types of things. And then we're going to look at the life of the roof. We're going to probably excavate some of the, let's say we have a tile roofing for a homeowners association or a condo association, rather.
Right.
We're actually going to have a contractor. We'll have them come out. We'll pull up some tiles and we'll check the underlayment, because in those types of situations, a lot of times your tile might look great. But it's really, the tile's not the problem. It's the underlayment and all the other flashings and all the other issues. So we go and we give you a detailed report on the condition of your building. If we say, yes, you need to replace your roof this year, now you've got a written, signed, and sealed report that outlines with photographs the reasons why it needs done.
And you're not selling a roof, so they can take your advice, and that's, it's...
Yeah, and I'm not guaranteed to oversee the project as an owner representative or doing roof consulting services. So they could let me go at any minute, and decide, okay, well, we agree that we should replace the roofs, but we're not going to use you now to replace the roofs. We're going to go use somebody else. That's fine. I never know if that's going to happen. So yeah, the opinion is truly an unbiased opinion.
Now, we got an email from Peter in Naples. He says, our condominium has roofs that are 25 years old. They're original to the building. There are no leaks or other problems. The tiles look pretty good. Is there any reason why we have to replace them now? A group of homeowners are pressing the board to replace them now, but we do not see the reason to do so until there's a problem. Do you agree?
No, and this goes back to that condition survey. But even more importantly, given a roof that's 25 years old, and he mentioned it was tile roof, or the person who asked the question, the tile roofs at 25 years old, you've got to imagine most tile roofs that I go and look at that are 20 to 25 years old were all built well before we had a lot of established Florida building codes.
Sure, that's true.
And so even if you don't have leaks, which I would argue that you probably don't have a lot of leaks, but you've probably got leaks on the 25-year-old.
You just don't know about them, yeah.
And that's the other thing, you probably don't know about them. But then it gets back to that issue that, most of those roofs back in those age, the tile roofs had, an organic felt paper that were under there, and that stuff's broken down and is no good. And that's truly your only source of actual water protection. But not only that, the question you have to ask is when I go and look at these roofs, a lot of them are held down with just one nail.
Right.
And that's holding down the entire tile. And these things are not what we call hurricane worthy.
Right.
So while they are grandfathered in, you're not required by Florida Building Code to replace this roof because it's not hurricane worthy. The reality is that if you get hit by a hurricane, you're going to have massive destruction to the whole community. You're going to have water coming into all the units, tiles flying everywhere, breaking windows, and it's going to be a big disaster compared to the way we do tile roofs today.
So your reaction would be, or your response would be more proactive, go ahead and replace the roofs now, because no sense in waiting for the inevitable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, nine times out of 10, that is my recommendation.
Now, the second biggest ticket item that you mentioned is paving. What's the typical useful life of parking lots and roads and serving condominiums or HOAs?
Typically, associations get about 20 to 25 years out of asphalt pavement.
Okay.
And this asphalt pavement does age. It ages different than concrete. Concrete ages very, very slow. Now, the steel inside concrete, we talk about building restoration a little bit. That ages fast, but asphalt really kind of breaks down over time, and there's not a lot to do to prevent that. There is a little bit of preventative maintenance you can do, and you can extend the useful life, but really you're not going to get pretty much more than 25 years out of an asphalt project.
Okay. And then so what type of preventive maintenance is there for, an asphalt road? I mean, is there anything they should be doing?
Yeah, there's cracks. As your asphalt ages, what it does is it loses a lot of its elasticity. So it will begin to shrink on itself, and you'll start seeing cracks appear in your asphalt. And those cracks ought to be, routed out and filled. The reason why is because water getting into those cracks and under the asphalt is one of the primary causes of causing the asphalt to age and break down faster. Other issues that cause the asphalt to break down are ultraviolet light exposure, thermal expansion and contraction, which we talked about, the water penetrating underneath, which is why you ought to detail the cracks and have that inspected probably every year. Have an asphalt contractor come out and walk the property and repair cracks. And then the other issue that I see a lot with asphalt where there's premature aging is where like the dump trucks come into the community and things like that. The asphalt tends to not have as much life where these heavy machinery and heavy trucks are coming into the community.
Now we have another email. This is Paul in Naples. He says, in Ohio, we always crack fill our asphalt drives and parking areas to prevent further deterioration. Our asphalt vendor says the crack filling is not necessary here in Florida and simply wants to seal coat the drives. Is there any value to seal coating, or should we not do crack fill first? I think you sort of answered that. I mean, we should be crack filling.
Yeah, you should definitely be crack filling, which almost doesn't happen at all here in Florida, very much, which is shocking to me. The reason why they say it doesn't need to happen too much in Florida is because cracks up north in asphalt are deadly because you get the water in there, and then when the water freezes, it expands and just completely shatters, the asphalt.
We call those potholes.
Yeah. So very, very important up north. Down here, they because we don't have that freeze thaw cycle, they say it's not important, but what they don't realize is we have so much humidity and so much water. You also don't want that water getting in there and undermining your underlayment.
And Josh, if someone wants you to come out and take a look at the asphalt of their community, how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. They can call us at our office at 941-206-3000, or you can email us at office@consultengineering.com.
Excellent. Well, you're listening to Joshua Porter here on the Boardroom. My name's Trevor Lutz, and Joshua is with Consult Engineering, and we're talking about parking lots to roofs, maintaining your community. We've got a lot more on this subject, so stick with us. You have re-entered the boardroom. My name is Trevor Lutz, and thank you for being with us. Today, a very interesting topic. We're sitting with Joshua Porter. He's the president from Consult Engineering, and they're a local engineering firm. They specialize in helping associations work through any of the physical plant issues in their community. And Josh, just before the break, we were talking about asphalt and repair, and there was a question from a listener about seal coating and crack filling, and we sort of only just touched on that subject. Seal coating, I mean, you see a lot of that happening this time of year. Should they be doing it?
A lot of seal coating goes on, and a lot of contractors, will come out and tell you, hey, you don't need to do this, you don't need to do that, you don't need to fill the cracks, you don't need to mill and resurface your asphalt. Just seal coat it. And it's like this magical Band-Aid for asphalt. And seal coating is different from an overlay. So just to clarify that, and overlays do have value, but seal coating is for the most part, it's really not much more than a paint job on your asphalt. It makes the community look really nice. You can, you get to restripe all your parking spaces, and it will look gorgeous for about the next 6 months to a year. But if you are spending money on seal coating as a preventative maintenance measure, there's almost very little to no benefit to it.
Really?
Asphalt ages literally over time. It ages also due to water intrusion and to other aspects of the way the binder breaks down over time. Ultraviolet light, which is what the seal coating effectively slows down the penetration of, has a very, very little effect on the aging of asphalt in Florida. So, asphalt paving parking lots and roads that I see in private homeowner associations and condo associations that are religiously seal coated don't seem to last any longer than those where they just completely ignored it. And the question they say is, well, seal coating prevents, you've got aggregate coming loose, and I can see there's like loose gravel on the surface, and people forget asphalt is designed to wear away like that. So, just because you have loose aggregate and you have a little bit of raveling here and there, on a 20-year-old asphalt project is not necessarily a bad thing. When we go out and evaluate it, we're really looking for cracks, vertical differentials in the asphalt, and other things other than how much worn the surface is.
Now, let's assume the association decides to probably take your advice and not do a seal coat, but they're going to be doing, milling or a resurfacing project. What are some of the factors or variables they should be looking at before they embark on a project like that?
When you embark on a milling and resurfacing job, you need to determine how much you're going to mill. Are you going to only mill a little bit off the surface and then basically do a thin overlay on top of it? Are you going to mill all the asphalt down to the base, shell or stone base? What type of asphalt mix are you going to use? What thickness are you going to order and have laid down? How well should it be compacted? What surface preparation should be done after milling and before new asphalt is laid? How should the asphalt application go? What is the temperature, detailing? I mean, there's a lot of aspects.
I would say you're way over my pay grade at this point. So at the point where the association is looking at these, I mean, how do they decide? I mean, I assume I'd call Josh and have him come out and take a look and tell me.
Yeah, most of the time, contractors will, a lot of times we're called after the association has already called contractors. And again, they're confused by all the different options because different contractors are proposing different materials. They're proposing different mix types.
Right.
And none of them are necessarily wrong. So a lot of times what we need to do is we need to come in and explain to associations that, well, if you do this, you can expect this. And you can expect this many years of life out of it. If you do this over here, which might cost a little bit more, you might get more years of life out of it, expected life.
Right.
So we can kind of make heads or tails of all this stuff. And then once the association says, okay, well, we want to go right down the middle and we want to balance cost savings today with longevity tomorrow, then I say, okay, well, then you want this type of mix design, you want these kinds of details, and then we put it out to bid so that all the contractors are bidding true apples to apples. They're all bidding the same thing.
Because there's quite a difference, obviously, between just a simple seal coating to a milling and resurfacing. I mean, you're talking about a big cost differential there.
Big cost differential for the association, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for contractors, their profit margins are actually much higher on seal coating.
Sure.
So when you have a really ugly looking asphalt parking lot and road or entrance to your community, and you call 5 contractors and 4 of them tell you need to mill and resurface, or 3 of them, let's say, tell you need to mill and resurface, and it's going to be $100 and something thousand, and then the other 2 contractors say, well, you really just need to seal coat and it's only going to cost you $15,000. Associations really ought to realize that seal coating doesn't fix concrete, or doesn't fix asphalt, and also the profit margins are much higher on seal coating. Even though it's that contractor's only getting $15,000 versus $150,000 to mill and resurface, his profit margins on that are much higher, and he's in and out in half the time, and he's going on to the next job to seal coat.
That's right.
So it makes sense to me why contractors promote seal coating so much. There's a lot of money in it.
Now, we've talked about roofs, we've talked about asphalt. Let's jump back to the buildings, and the exterior of the buildings is an important facet of what we have to maintain. In painting, it seems like something that would be really easy for easy to reserve, a project that an association can certainly undertake by themselves. Is this something an association should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, associations that are small by means they actually have small buildings. So they have like 2-story buildings, and if a lot of these 2-story condo and homeowner association buildings, they have an overhang. So the amount of exposure of the water to the walls is minimal. It's easy for their maintenance man or for the board to go out there and inspect to make sure that the contractor's cutting out caulk. I can understand why on smaller projects like that, an association would feel comfortable managing the painting contractor himself and overseeing it. And a lot of times you can go to the painting rep, like for example, you can go down to Sherwin-Williams and you can have them provide a painting spec for you.
Sure.
So a lot of times you can do this. You start getting into 3+ stories, and you start getting into larger buildings with sheer faces, no overhangs, and the guys are having to paint the building from swing stages or high reaches, and right. you don't have your board members that can go on these things to actually inspect to see that they're doing it. That's when we really recommend you bring in a consultant to oversee the painting project, and also to design the painting project, because a painting project, in my experience, 9 times out of 10 is never just a painting project.
You're right.
It's always going to involve ancillary repairs to stucco and also to concrete.
What's the risk then of an association, trying to manage a painting project then for smaller associations though? I mean, you're saying they can do it, but there's got to be some pitfalls to doing that.
There is, you don't really know what kind of millage the contractor's putting out there. If the board members aren't out there on a continuous basis, then you really don't know if the contractor's cutting out the caulking around the windows or if he's just caulking over it. And this is no knock against contractors, but different crews and different workers have different motives when they're out there and they're working, and sometimes you catch these things where you've got to correct what the contractor's doing. So there is risk for a smaller association or an association with smaller, shorter buildings. There is still even a risk for them managing it themselves. Absolutely.
We've got some more emails coming in. Do you ready to take another question?
Sure.
Ruth in Estero says, our community is only 5 years old, but we're getting some odd staining on the stucco along the foundation of the building. A local painting contractor suggests just painting over it, but I'm afraid there's something else going on. How do we investigate this to ensure that we don't paint over a problem?
This is something we're called out on quite often. Not this exact situation, but very similar, where they're concerned. They know there's a problem, and the painting contractors can't really tell them the cause. But they're they want the job, so they're saying, well, we'll paint over it and it'll last 7 years. Don't worry about it. And our job is always to discover the cause of a problem. So is it because the soil line is too high? Is it above the slab grade? Is the stucco wicking up moisture? Is there sprinkler problems that are spraying the building that need to be addressed or corrected? Is the staining low on the building caused by water intrusion higher up, and that's just where it's coming out.
Right.
If it's orange, rusty stains, a lot of times you can say, well, that looks like sprinkler heads are spraying the building. If you've got like this white staining, a lot of times that's what we call efflorescence. And so that's usually indicative of water getting into the wall or into the envelope of the building higher up and then coming out lower down, and it pulls the minerals from the concrete and masonry out with it, and it deposits them on the face and leaves this white chalky look.
And really bad idea if you paint over that, because now you've just hidden the problem.
You've got it.
Wow. Okay. We got another email from Keith in Fort Myers. He says, our condominium painted the buildings about 5 years ago. The paint is now peeling in some areas. The painting company is saying that the warranty has expired and we should just repaint. Is it worthwhile to have someone like Consult look at this for us?
Absolutely. If you have a 5-year paint job and the warranty is expired, and that means obviously you had a 5-year warranty. So that's typically in my industry, that's a lower grade paint that you're putting on the building, which is fine. But to have it be peeling off, that shows that you've got a bigger problem going on, and it may be because a previous layer was never sealed properly. And we had a building actually just last year that we were doing concrete restoration on, and we were also doing painting. And when we did the bonded pull tests, we found out that the paint, even though it looked fine on the building, was actually peeling off in large sheets. Wow. And that's because 2 paint jobs before, they never sealed it. They never put a paint sealer on there. And so the paint continued to degrade and become chalky, and the 2 layers on top of it were coming off. Well, then the new painting manufacturer for this new project would not warranty the building, and the contractor refused to put paint on a building that's peeling.
Sure.
So there's definitely other things that need to be looked at, and in that case, we actually had to recommend that the building be stripped.
Now, before the board even talks about paint colors and things like that, it sounds like they should be calling you in early to start taking a look at the building, helping them put together the scope, and doing some of the legwork, correct?
Absolutely.
And how do they get a hold of you, Josh, to do that?
They can call our office at 941-206-3000, or they can email us at office@consultengineering.com.
Okay, great. Well, this is The Boardroom. My name's Traver Lutz. We're talking to Joshua Porter. He's the president from Consult Engineering. We've got more with Josh coming up, so stick with us here on The Boardroom. And thank you for rejoining us here in The Boardroom. My name's Traver Lutz, and every Saturday morning we bring you the best of the best. We bring you local professionals that can help you walk through issues at your association, your condominium, your HOA, your co-op, your marina, whatever the case may be. And today is no different. We have Joshua Porter. He's the president from Consult Engineering, and we're talking about parking lots to roofs and maintaining your community. And we've talked about roofs and asphalt and painting. But one of the biggest things you talked about, Joshua, one of the biggest maintenance items is building restoration. And, tell us what makes this so important.
Building restoration involves a lot of different individual tasks, all with the aim of bringing your building back up to a functional condition. It's also one of the few things like roofing that you actually get to restart the timer on a lot of the aging of various components. The reason why building restoration is so important is because it almost always involves life safety issues. For example, if a slab edge on a balcony on a high rise is spalling due to rusty steel and the concrete's breaking apart, this may compromise the actual guardrail for that balcony,
Absolutely.
thus making it dangerous, for people who are out there. Also, falling concrete debris is very dangerous and can kill you. The individual tasks involved with a building restoration project are very high dollar tasks. Stucco replacement, concrete repair. For example, a 1 cubic foot of concrete repair is right now somewhere in the $350 to $400 range per cubic foot.
Wow.
So these are because of these high individual costs and because of the fact that buildings need restored approximately every 10 years after their first initial restoration. And different buildings, depending on their location, whether they're on the water or whether they're further inland, they'll have different initial restoration lives. But once you have that first restoration, it's typically about every 10 years.
And I assume the things that are causing these facets to deteriorate, it's the weather here, right?
Absolutely. The weather in Florida is very caustic. It means we have a lot of salt in the air, and this salt, when it mixes with the moisture in the air during rainfall and sits on the concrete, turns into like chloric acid and things like this. But salt-laden air, water intrusion. So we talk about the cracks on buildings, and this is why painting is such a great missed opportunity for a lot of associations that don't hire a professional, because then you got these cracks. They allow more water in, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and then a big one is dissimilar materials. So a lot of, for example, a lot of guardrails are made out of aluminum, and then they're installed into the concrete, which has steel, and the two metals react poorly with each other, and they cause the building to age.
Wow. So this, when we're talking about building restoration, though, this isn't something an association should be looking at in their 20th year of existence. This is something that they probably need to be more proactive and plan earlier so they can start properly assessing for it and reserving for it.
Absolutely. I mean, there are preventative measures you can take, and for your initial building restoration, 5 and 10-year-old buildings, I'm constantly trying to recommend that they do this and do that, which obviously, requires spending money. But I'm looking down the road and I'm saying, hey, we're going to push this. Instead of you having to restore your building when it's 15 years old, we'll be restoring it when it's 25 years old for its initial restoration. So it's money well spent.
Well, what's some of the preventive maintenance steps that they should be taking?
The biggest ones for building restoration is your painting and sealants, and having a very thorough scope of work when doing each of your painting projects. And that's what I talked about before, of how that's such a big missed opportunity. Because during the painting projects, you can, most contractors will have in the specs that are prepared, by the paint manufacturer, that the caulking around windows be replaced as needed. So basically then you've got the guy out hanging on a high-rise building from the swing stage, and he's making the determination if it's needed or not to be replaced. So a lot of times in high-rises, we'll recommend to just go ahead and do straight replacement. It's only a small increase in project cost, and it just makes sense because it gives everything a new life. But most painting projects that aren't overseen by an engineering firm or a consulting firm really are limited to paint and caulk around windows. And they don't address things like waterproofing. They don't address things like caulking around post rails for guardrails on balconies. And there's a lot of other crack repairs. How should they be repaired? What product should be used to repair it? All that matters. And again, checking out that stucco. But all those things that you can do during a painting project, you push that painting project cost up 10%, and you can save yourself a ton of money in restoration later.
And if you don't hire an engineer like a consult, you really don't have a way to ensure that the contractor knows what they're doing, number one, and number two, that they're going to take those extra steps, because as you mentioned before, that's going to drive the cost of the project, and the contractor probably is going to be resistant to doing that. Yeah,
especially on painting projects, but it's on concrete restoration projects, building restoration projects. You have to have an engineer on those projects. For those building restoration projects. And the reason why is because once you start repairing and making not modifications, but once you start making repairs to structural components of the building, the building departments here in Southwest Florida require that an engineer be on site to oversee how the project's going. So in those types of projects, and it's no wonder that's 90% of our business is building restoration, because it's one of those things that's actually required by statute and by all the building officials here, that they require our services on these sites.
Now, one of the things I think is unique about your company is you're really geared towards assisting the associations as opposed to, you don't work for developers or builders. You work directly for the board of directors, right?
Precisely. And most of my contacts are actually directly with boards of directors, our initial contacts, I should say. As a policy, we don't work with developers, and we don't work with work for contractors that work for developers. So we really keep a division of focus there, and we really only focus on condo and homeowner associations. And I would say maybe 5% of my business comes from other sources, a new construction contractor who, gave us one job out of the year or something like that, and these little things. But yeah, 95% of our income is all about providing owner representation to condo and homeowner associations.
Excellent. We've got some more questions that have come in. Bert in North Fort Myers Beach asks, a number of homeowners would like our mid-rise community to replace all the windows. We've had some leaks, and all the window contractors we've spoken to say we need to replace the windows. I think we need an unbiased opinion from someone not selling us windows. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, I agree. Window projects are going to be a lot of times one of the most expensive projects an association will ever undertake.
Sure.
And a lot of times per project, it actually even dwarfs concrete restoration. The only reason why concrete restoration on a whole is actually more expensive is because you're doing it every 10 years usually, as opposed to a window project where you do it once and hopefully you don't have to address it for another 20 or 30 years.
And if you pointed out time and time again, this leak may not be related to the windows either.
You got it. We had an association in North Fort Myers actually that has a lot of leaking around the windows, and they before we got involved, they hired a contractor and to redo all the caulking around the windows. Now the caulking was bad around the windows, but when I sat down and met with the association, I said, well, this may not stop the water intrusion. There may be other sources, and so we oversaw that project, and the contractor did his caulking and sealing work around the windows, and lo and behold, a couple weeks later, we get reports that there's still a couple leaks coming in. Wow. And when we were up on the stage and investigating this, we discovered that there was problems with the stucco around the windows. There was problem with the stucco bands, and so the primary source of water at this point was still the stucco and stucco bands. Now, this association, being a younger, under 10 years old association, they knew it couldn't have been their windows.
Right.
But, an association that's 20 or 25 years may be misled into thinking, well, this is our windows that are leaking, and actually it's not. It's the building leaking around the windows.
Wow, surprise. Mary in Naples says, our condominium is getting ready to turn over from the developer to the elected board of directors. We need to have an engineering study done because we have lots of questions. The developer says that we don't have to have the study done because they're going to do it for us. Is there any reason to have our own study done?
Absolutely. The study that the developer will provide is called a turnover report. And this is actually required now by Florida statutes. I don't remember when this was added in, but they are required to provide this turnover report signed and sealed by an engineer. And it's supposed to comment on things kind of like a reserve study, maintenance items and things that you should be aware of. There's one developer that I've been in contact with on a case earlier this year. And in that respect, the contractor, I'm sorry, not the developer, the contractor who built the building actually prepared a maintenance manual. And he actually discovered his own construction defects and then said, these are maintenance items and you need to make sure you fix them. And then he kind of felt like, he wrote himself off that way. But the study that we provide in this situation when you're turning over from a developer or contractor or from the developer is a transition study. And what we do is we go through and we look at items that are going to cost you down the road. And if they're things that should be fixed by the developer and contractor, we'll note it as a construction defect. And then a lot of times the association can make a choice to have their attorney file a claim under that.
So your turnover report almost becomes the blueprint for their future funding of reserves too, because you're going to be telling them what areas they need to focus on going forward.
Absolutely. The only thing it doesn't really provide is the actual dollars. Like a reserve study would. The financial analysis isn't there in a transition study, but we definitely look for all the problems, point them out, and identify them.
Okay, excellent. And if somebody wants to get a hold of you to do a reserve study or to walk their asphalt, I presume you do some type of consultation with them initially before you put together a project?
Yep, we always do free proposal visits.
Okay.
So
we like the word free.
Yep, we come out, you meet us face to face, shake our hand, make sure we're real, and that you get along with us, and we'll look at your situation and look at your issue. That's the only way to get a good, accurate proposal from any consultant, is to meet them first and have them walk your property.
And I know there's some people that want to talk to you. Josh, how do they get a hold of you?
They can call our office at 941-206-3000, or they can email us at office@consultengineering.com.
We want to thank you for joining us here in the boardroom, Josh. It's been a pleasure. And until next week, we wish you all well.